Okay, once again, good afternoon to all of you. Hello, participants. Rakesh Singh ji.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, so should I start the session? Whether all of you are available?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Today's session will take.
We can start, sir.
Okay. 1 minute, bus. So today's session is solid waste from chemical industries, and Shrimati Kanchan Priya, she is with us. Mrs. Kanchan Priya, working as Senior Manager in NTPC Limited, currently deputed to RGPPL. She has completed her BTech in Electrical and Electronics Engineering, and she is also gold medalist during her tenure from Sastra University, and has been working in NTPC for past 12 years in various departments like C&I, maintenance, overhauling, power plant induction and commissioning, commercial tax and legal compliance, import-export clearance, to name a few. She has won professional circle and mentored quality circle in winning group in NR region of NTPC. She has also worked for TCS for 6 months in capacity of senior development analyst. So she will take a class today on solid waste from chemical industry. So ma'am, please start.
Am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon to all the participants of this session. As introduced, I am Kanchan from NTPC, currently on deputation in RGPPL, going to take a class on solid waste in chemical industry. First of all, I would like to introduce the topic to everyone and what will be the roadmap for this class. There are actually two.
Ma'am,
Uh,
you can start slideshow in your
yeah. Is my
slideshow.
slideshow not running? I have actually shared it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Is it visible?
Yeah, visible, ma'am.
Okay. So there are two terms in this topic. One is solid waste and second is chemical industry. And to understand this topic well, we have to know about the two topics, which actually seems to be very generalized but have inherent meaning to it, because sometimes we actually confuse with solid waste, thinking that okay, solid waste is something which is solid in nature, and chemical industry also something which actually involves only reactions, filtration, etc. So first of all, I would like to give a brief introduction on the topic. Then I will be defining the chemical industry. What is chemical industry? Then production process, that is like raw materials involved, the processes and the end products of the chemical industry. Then why chemical industry is discussed, like what is the scenario of chemical industry in our country, and its contribution and the environmental hazards and risks inherent in this chemical industry. Because recently on 7th May 2020, all of us know that Vizag actually saw a very unfortunate mishap which led to the loss of 12 life of 12 men involved there because of the leak of the styrene gas there in the LG polymer plant. Then we will be discussing the environmental problems, and after that what actually is solid waste and solid waste from chemical industry. Then we will be discussing some case studies, the countries which have done good in chemical industry and management of solid waste from these plants, and at last certain policies, both international and Indian policies related to chemicals and chemical industry, and to minimize the threats and hazards from the products used and raw materials depletion or the waste generated from this industry. So, as discussed, the we can see here that the global chemical market it is expected to reach to $4,304 billion by 2025. And right now it is at $3,340 billion. With this number only, we can actually guess how large this industry is and how much employment it generates, how much in revenue it generates for any country or our world, and how important it is for the progress and trade and business environment of world as well as our country India. Then major companies, though we are also having many companies in India which are very large, like Tata Chemicals and Aarti, Atul Chemicals, etc. But the major chemical companies in the world are, first is Chinese company, that is China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation. The second is BASF and Bayer, both are German company. Third is Dow Chemical, which is a US company. US also has a major stake in chemical industry. And last is LyondellBasell Industries. It is a Dutch company. As we can see, Asia Pacific is the largest region in the global chemical market, which accounts for 49% of the market. In Asia Pacific, US, Japan, India, all the Asian nations and US and Caribbean nations come. Then North America is the second largest region, accounting for 17% of the global chemical market. As I have already told, US has a very big stake in chemical industry. Then third is like Africa is the smallest region in the global chemical market. And this actually helps India also, because majority of our chemical products, they are actually exported to Africa only. We will discuss chemical industry in detail after some time, but the chemical market segmentation we can see here, which we all are aware of these kind of terms like general chemical product, printing inks, toiletries, soap and cleaning compounds, adhesives, paints and coatings, pesticides and agricultural chemicals. I want to point out that our agricultural sector, it is a very large consumer of chemical products, be it pesticide, insecticides, or fertilizers like urea, nitrogen based fertilizers, or phosphate based fertilizers. These all are chemicals only, and these are produced from chemicals or raw materials like coal, oil, air, water, etc. Then chemical fertilizers, synthetic rubber and fibers. Synthetic rubber is also a major consumer of chemicals. Then plastic material and resins. Then inorganic chemicals, synthetic dye and pigment, industrial gas and petrochemicals. Like Reliance is a company which is actually has very high stake in petrochemicals. Then what actually is chemical industry? One word which defines chemical industry the most is, it is a diverse industry. What I said in the starting itself, that chemical industry seems like one word, but there are so many aspects related to this chemical industry. ये एक छोटा सा टर्म है, but इसमें बहुत सारे रॉ मटेरियल, प्रोसेसेस और बाई प्रोडक्ट्स जनरेट होते हैं. केमिकल इंडस्ट्री खुद में एक इंडस्ट्री है जो कि रॉ मटेरियल्स प्रोवाइड करता है दूसरे इंडस्ट्रीज को, दूसरे सेक्टर्स को, जैसे कि एग्रीकल्चर को देता है, इन ऑटोमोबाइल्स को देता है, देन टेक्सटाइल को देते हैं, पेट्रोकेमिकल्स को देते हैं. सो chemical industry itself is a consumer of chemical industry, and also other industries are consumer of chemical industry. There is no one टिपिकल प्रोडक्ट और वन टिपिकल कंपनी, दैट्स व्हाट आई सेड कि केमिकल इंडस्ट्री का एक टिपिकल प्रोडक्ट नहीं कि ओके ये सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड प्रोड्यूस करेगा या ये एसिड प्रोड्यूस करेगा या बेस प्रोड्यूस करेगा या सॉल्ट प्रोड्यूस करेगा या इंटरमीडिएट प्रोडक्ट्स प्रोड्यूस करेगा या ड्रग प्रोड्यूस करेगा। बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं इसके, और इसका एक टिपिकल कंपनी भी नहीं है। जैसे हमारा आरती, हमारा वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट इंडियन कंपनी है, इट इज आरती इंडस्ट्री, विच इज एक्चुअली अ जायंट इन agro pharmaceuticals and agrochemicals etc. and उसी से, और हमारा सेकेंड कंपनी है टाटा केमिकल्स, ये बेसिक केमिकल्स बनाता है, यानी कि जैसे एसिड, देन अल्कली, सॉल्ट्स, सोडा एश एक्सेट्रा। तो इसका डेफिनेशन इसलिए बहुत ही मुश्किल है। यूएस खुद से डिफाइन करता है, ब्रिटेन का की अपनी डेफिनेशन है, नीदरलैंड की अपनी डेफिनेशन है, लेकिन जो मेनली हम लोग वाइड डिस्क्रिप्शन देते हैं कि क्या है केमिकल इंडस्ट्री, उसमें हम ये कह सकते हैं कि केमिकल इंडस्ट्री हैज 3 मेन सेगमेंट्स। One is basic industry, second is intermediate industry, एंड थर्ड इज द फाइनल प्रोड्यूस इंडस्ट्री, जहां पे हमें फाइनल प्रोड्यूस होता है, जैसे हमारे सोप, डिटर्जेंट, ये सारे। इंटरमीडिएट यानी कि इंटरमीडिएट इंडस्ट्री का जो प्रोडक्ट होगा वो दूसरे इंडस्ट्रीज में यूज होंगे। और बेसिक इंडस्ट्री हो गया यानी कि जिसमें एसिड्स, एल्कलीज और आपके सॉल्ट्स बनते हैं। और जो सबसे वाइड स्प्रेड हमारा है सेगमेंटेशन, जो कि हमारा इंडिया और एशिया पैसिफिक, नीदरलैंड से सब यूज करते हैं, वो है कि इनको हम 8 भाग में डाल सकते हैं। पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स, बेसिक केमिकल्स, प्लास्टिक प्रोडक्ट्स, फार्मास्यूटिकल्स, पेंट्स एंड इंक्स, रबर प्रोडक्ट्स और डिटर्जेंट एंड टॉयलेटरीज, और जो इन सभी सातों में नहीं आएंगे वो अदर्स में आ जाएंगे। अब है कि व्हाट इज द प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस। जो हमें पहले देखना है वो है कि क्या क्या रॉ मटेरियल्स हैं हमारे पास केमिकल इंडस्ट्रीज में। दिस इज अ मेजर रॉ मटेरियल, प्रोडक्ट इन यूजेस ऑफ द केमिकल इंडस्ट्री। हमारे जो मेजर रॉ मटेरियल्स है केमिकल इंडस्ट्री के, वो है कोल, ऑयल, एयर, मिनरल, नेचुरल गैस एंड सी वाटर। ये रॉ मटेरियल ही यूज होते हैं डिफरेंट केमिकल्स बनाने के लिए। एंड हमारा और वर्ल्ड का, इंडिया का और वर्ल्ड का अभी यही एक कोशिश है कि हम ज्यादा से ज्यादा रिन्यूएबल रॉ मटेरियल्स यूज करें रादर देन नॉन रिन्यूएबल रॉ मटेरियल्स लाइक कोल, ऑयल। We should use sea water, air, natural, other renewable kind of minerals, etc. Energy, wood is actually it is non-renewable, because if we actually cut tree at a very faster pace, it won't be renewable. But then also we are taking it as a renewable source of energy because we can produce it. Then products में जो इसके main products हम लोग है, वो है एसिड, अल्कोहल, बेंजीन, कॉस्टिक सोडा, एस्टर्स, एथर्स, एथिलीन, फाइबर्स, नायलॉन, पिगमेंट्स, डाइज, पॉलिस्टर, पॉलीथीन, पॉलीप्रोपिलीन। ये सारी चीजें हमारे डे टू डे लाइफ में भी यूज होते हैं और डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स में भी यूज होंगे, जैसे एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर, या फिर अभी जो हमारा ऑटोमोबाइल है, वो भी ऑटोमोबाइल भी बहुत अच्छे से केमिकल्स यूज करते हैं। टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री में भी काफी ज्यादा यूज होती हैं। देन यूटेंसिल्स बनाने में यूज होते हैं सॉल्वेंट्स, ये सब। उसके बाद हमारे जो फाइनल एंड यूजर्स हैं वो हैं एडहेसिव्स बनेंगे, ऑटोमोबाइल्स, बोर्ड्स, कारपेट, जो कि टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री मैंने कहा वो कारपेट्स। देन कंप्यूटर्स में भी यूज होते हैं आपके। देन कंस्ट्रक्शन मटेरियल्स, कंटेनर्स, कॉस्मेटिक्स दैट केमिकल। हाँ, ओके ओके ओके। Yeah, sorry, actually. Uh, yeah, so there are product end users also like cosmetic and personal care products which we are using like various creams and soaps, detergents and cleaners. It is a very big sector which is using output of chemical industry as the end user. And then fertilizer is there. I have told fertilizer, insecticides, be it any fertilizer, insecticide, pesticides, these all are chemicals. Then there are food ingredients, fuel additives, household materials which we use in kitchen, and then insulation for insulation, packaging, paints and coatings. All the paints, varnishes, coatings, etc. These are product of chemical industry only. Personal care products which I have explained right now. Then pesticides, pharmaceutical and drug industry is nothing but chemical industry, output of chemical industry only. All kind of chemical reactions, etc., are used to convert the APIs to the final pharmaceutical products or drugs. Then, and India is one of the largest producer of pharmaceuticals. We are actually, our Prime Minister have posted it so many times that we are known as the pharmacy of the world. It is because we are a great giant in chemical industry and we are producing lot of pharmaceuticals, agricultural chemicals, and also personal care products. Then there are pipings, preservatives, roofing, and safety glasses, soaps and detergents. Sports equipments are also using this chemical products, textiles, tires, toys. I would like to mention that China is the largest producer and exporter of toys. Toy is having a very good and big market in India, and it is very sad to say that most of the toys which we are actually seeing in Indian market is imported toys and exported via and by China only, and it is an in use of chemical industry only, toys. Then there is it is a brief about the chemical industry of India. uh, there are more than 80,000 commercial products. So we cannot mention all the products. That's what I have said in the earlier slide only, that there is no typical product and no typical industry which can define chemical industry as such. It is a very diverse industry with more than 80,000 commercial products. India's chemical industry is extremely diversified and can be broadly classified into that. That's what bulk chemicals. Bulk chemicals which are produced in much larger volumes, and it includes that acid, alkalis, and salts. Then specialty chemicals, which are for special purposes, like DDT. There is benzene, etc. Then agrochemicals, which are used in agricultural sector, like naphtha, urea, phosphate, nitrogen based fertilizers, etc. Petrochemicals, which are derived from petroleum. Reliance is using that, our petroleum jellies, our plastic, these are like petrochemicals products. And then polymers and fertilizers. India is the fourth largest producer of agrochemicals. I have already told that in agrochemicals as well as pharmaceuticals, we are having a very large stake. After US, Japan, and China, we are the fourth largest producer of agrochemicals. But actually, India is an agricultural based economy, and approximately 50% of our population, it depends directly or indirectly on agriculture. So it is not a great thing that we are standing on fourth position. We should have actually overtaken this US and particularly Japan, because it is a very small country with very few opportunities of agricultural, but then also because of the inherent problems and the supply chain blockages, we are standing at fourth position. India accounts for 16% 16% of world production of dyestuffs and dye intermediates. It is a big number actually, 16% of dye. Dye means like paints and dyes, etc. Indian colorant industry has emerged as a key player with a global market share of 15%. The country's chemical industry is de-licensed except for few hazardous chemicals. What does it mean by de-licensed? Means earlier, before liberalization and license Raj, all the industries, if I want to set up any industry, I have to take license and permit from the government. But except the hazardous chemicals like DDT, endosulfan, etc., other chemical industry for setting up, there is no need of license as such from the government. This industry is de-licensed, and India holds a strong position in exports and imports of chemicals at a global level and ranks 14th in exports and 8th in the imports at global level, excluding pharmaceuticals. We are not including pharmaceutical in this. If we include it, our rank will improve much more. And also our company, our government in export and exports, it's giving many like concessions in taxes of custom duties, etc., for boosting this chemical industry. Then the domestic chemical sector, small and medium enterprises are expected to showcase 18 to 23% revenue growth in FY22. Why I'm highlighting these things is like, if we will go further in the slides, we can see that there are many risks and hazard possibilities in chemical industry. Then why we are going or focusing on chemical industry, it is very important to use, because chemical industry as such is an industry which is linked to all other industries and sectors of the economy. We cannot avoid it. And so there is much need to actually go for a green chemical industry. That is an industry which will have least footmark or environmental pollution, and also hazardous and toxic substances involved, so that it will be a win-win situation both for our economy as well as ecology. So we should try for green chemical industry, which is a term coined by Finland, because it is actually moving towards such green chemical industry by various steps it has taken in the process, as well as the starting raw material utilized in chemical industry to reduce the byproducts or toxic end products from the chemical industry. India's proximity to the Middle East, the world source of petrochemicals feedstock, enables it to benefit on economies of scale. What it is trying to say that we are very close to Middle East, like UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc., which are the major exporter of petroleum products, which is the raw material for chemical industry. So as we are very close to these Middle East countries, so our transportation cost or such kind of procurement cost reduces, which actually benefits us as compared to other nations. But this one thing which favors US and China is that they are having their own sources of petroleum or oil and natural gases, which they are using for manufacturing as a raw material in this chemical industry, which is benefiting them even more than India on economies of scale. So this is the overall scenario of India versus other countries of this world, and why this chemical industry is so important for our nation. Major chemical clusters of our country are, like in states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh. These are the states which are mainly involved in or they have actually excelled in chemical industry sector. In the first slide, I have mentioned certain international companies like Bayer, BASF, etc. But now these are the 10 chemical industries of India. the Aarti industry, it is really actually doing well in chemical industry, which can be also gauged from its stock market performance, which has increased a lot. So Aarti industry is a pride of our nation in chemical sector. Then Atul Limited, BSF India Limited, GFCL, Gujarat Fluorochemicals. I have already mentioned Gujarat has a major stake in chemical industry. So these are the companies of Gujarat: Gujarat Fluorochemicals, Gujarat Alkalis and Chemicals, then India Glycols, Pidilite Industries, Tata Chemicals, and UPL Limited. These are the 10 major chemical industries of India. So till now I have said that why this chemical industry is so important for our economy, Indian economy or world economy. But every thing has its own pros and cons. So chemical industry has problem like it is the one of the most polluting sector of economy. The chemical industry has been recognized as a very polluting sector and has gained the distrust of the society because of the accidents involved, like that Bhopal gas tragedy. It is a very dark stain on India's past. Then recently on 7th May, as I mentioned in 2020, in the LG's polymer industry, styrene gas leaked. So whenever such kind of accidents happen, it not only leads to life losses at that particular time, but it has its effects on generations. Like in Bhopal, for Bhopal gas tragedy, what happened? It not only killed those many people instantly, but it led to many problems down the generations in Bhopal. So this, because of this, society doesn't trust chemical industry, and whenever government tries to set up a new chemical industry at any site, the society at large, the population, the people living in that particular area, they actually they protest against setting up of such industries in their area, because the nation will get benefit from these industry, but its ill effects or environmental pollution caused by these chemical industries, that will be borne by the population of that particular area. This happens always if government declares that okay, it is going to set up this chemical industry or raw material industry in a particular area. The general public associates chemical industry with, if you will say chemical industry, the general public will only think about the waste disposal, pollution, the disease and danger, depletion of resources there, particularly cancer increases. It is actually, if not handled properly, it leads to cancer also. Then landfills, accidents, as I mentioned, LG industry, and then styrene, that styrene leak there, and the Bhopal gas tragedy. And these are very large scale accidents. If we go through the data, government data and records, we will find that accidents are common in these industries where leakages or some kind of toxic emissions are there. But if it is of smaller scale, then either it doesn't come in public or media, or even the locals won't be able to know. Only that plant or industry will be knowing that this particular accident has happened, and they will try to suppress it, because general public is very much against chemical industry because of the kind of diseases associated with the waste of chemical industry. Then the main problem lies in the fact that the cost of raw materials and disposal of waste are underestimated. The problem is that if a chemical industry, for say Aarti industry, if it is opting for a particular process, and if it goes for green chemical production, then the operational cost of Aarti industry will increase many folds. And no company wants to lose its economic economy of scale because of such things, because the problems and the diseases, the pollution, they will come later on, like 10, 25, 30 years after what we have generated now. So none of the company or country is willing to invest so much for the green chemical industry. The true cost of waste includes disposal cost, but if we will see the long-term effect of such things, then we will find out that the cost-benefit ratio is in favor of such green chemical industry, because after 20-25 years, when waste will start coming, then the government or the company will have to spend much more for control measures. So it is better to start early in terms of raw material or the processes we use or operational procedures and the safety measures we use. So it is always better to use it forehand rather than going for control measures, because in control measures we are spending also, and our result is also not up to the mark, because it is not pro action but reaction to certain kind of accidents. And then in general, chemical industry is still not eager to alter chemical products and processes and prefers to deal with waste end of pipe. That's what I said. They don't want to invest early. They wait for the waste to come out and the society and the environment at large to know about it, and then go for any kind of reactive steps to control the pollution or the toxic or hazardous output or byproduct which has been generated by that particular industry. Then waste prevention coupled with recycling is a very effective strategy to solve the environmental problem in the chemical sector. That's the thing which has been done by Finland. It is going in two directions. First is waste prevention, and that too particularly at the source, at large, from the source itself, raw material stage itself, it is reducing the waste. And also it is going for recycling. Whatever product it is, chemical industries are producing, the byproducts or the in-use products, they are trying that the product should be biodegradable or recyclable. It should be recycled to something else rather than turned into a waste which has to be incinerated or means burnt or put in landfills. So waste prevention means the reduction of quantity and quality of waste at source, reduction in use of raw materials and energy, and the promotion of the reuse. This is the thing which has to be done in any industry, and particularly important in chemical industry. But the problem is that everyone knows it, and no one is willing to go for it, because it involves operational cost, which none of the management is willing to go for, because means in the starting years it will have impact on the economy of the scale, and the company may lose revenue, which none of the company wants to. This is the major problem with the chemical industry. And the initial investment of a pollution prevention project may be higher in some cases than the cost of installing conventional pollution control equipment. However, the annual operation and maintenance cost of removal will almost always make the total cost of the treatment higher than the total cost of preventive measures at sources. That's what I said. If we are looking at longer time scale, like 25, 30 years, then we will find that if we go for green chemical industry, where we are using certain operational processes or machines or better raw materials, renewable raw materials, then the overall cost will be lesser in chemical industry, in green chemical industry, than the conventional polluting type of chemical industry. However, treatment and disposal of residual waste, even after taking preventive measures, should be given due consideration. What are the environment, health, and the safety impacts of this chemical industry? Overall, the entire life of a chemical product, like from its start to end, that from cradle to grave, there is a potential for a negative impact both on human kind as well as environment. Humankind, like we saw in Bhopal gas or styrene or BPL leakage, that at a particular point some toxic gas or hazardous chemical will leak from that particular industry, and it will have impact on mankind health. And environmental, what are the environmental problems? Like we all have known about, we all know about the tropospheric ozone depletion, that is, and smog. both these things are actually mainly produced from these chemical industries as a byproduct or as an end use, like refrigerants, etc. That chlorofluorocarbons which we are using as refrigerants, they are the main contributor for ozone depletion. And also the NOx gases, SOx gases means NO2, NO3, then SO2, SO3 gases. When it actually combines with the air, it leads to smog, that is fog plus smoke is smog, and also it leads to acid rain. So these are the two impacts, one on mankind, humankind, and second is environmental effect. So as a user of the raw materials, it uses, this chemical industry uses natural gas, coal and coke, minerals, oil, natural gases, then energy and air, etc. As a source of energy and feedstock, the chemical industry can impact on the supply of non-renewable resources. This is also important, like chemical industry and like petroleum is used both by automobiles as well as chemical industry. So if chemical industry is using this natural gas and coal, coke, then such non-renewable resources won't be enough for other uses. Like what I'm from RGPPL, and I know what has happened with this gas. As if we take this natural gas, RGPPL is a gas-based plant. It uses natural gas as a raw material for the power generation. And what has happened, government priorities have changed in these recent years, past years, and now the natural gases are mainly for city based gas circulation, as well as the production of urea for the agricultural sector. So our power plant, which is producing electricity, is not running because of the lack of natural gas. And this RGPPL is one of the most efficient power plant, gas power plant of our country, which has efficiency of approximately 50%, more than 50%, you can say, which is one of the best running power plant. But because this natural gas has been diverted to urea as well as CBD, we are not getting it. So what this line wants to convey is that if we choose such raw materials for chemical industry which are renewable in nature, then we can preserve our non-renewable resources for other sectors of the economy. Then second is that processing the raw materials and feedstock can result in the release of hazardous pollutants to the environment. We will see that first is raw material is polluting, second is the process involved in chemical industries. It's processing, like formation of benzene. These are very much polluting and unhealthy for humankind. As can their actual use either by other industries or consumers. Then finally, hazardous waste can be generated by the chemicals industry as a byproduct of manufacturing and from products which work their way through the supply chain and are eventually disposed of after final use. Even the byproducts of such chemical industries which are of no use to us, which we want, and Finland has showed how to minimize it. It goes straight to the landfills or our river, sea, or ponds. This is very hazardous for us, because such kind of disposal of toxic waste, if disposed in water bodies or landfills, it will have long term impact both on man as well as environment. This is like this is a flow chart process stage. The last line which I have said, that in for every process involved there is a possible impact on health and environment. This is shown in this flow chart. Like for an example, if the process stage is extraction of raw materials, that is oil, coal, gas, air, water, and mineral. These are the actually raw materials for chemical industry. There is no other raw material. This is only oil, coal, gas, air, water, and minerals. So the possible impact is depletion of non-renewable resources. If we are making lot of chemicals or chemical products, then it will lead to depletion of non-renewable resources. Then chemical processing and refining, it will lead to routine and accidental release to air, water, and land from factories like propylene, methane, ethylene, benzene. Benzene causes cancer actually, and worker exposure and release from the use of energy, that is NOx, SOx, and CO2, which leads to major air pollution and smog and acid rain. Then bulk inorganic and organic propylene, and if they are transported, then there is a risk of transport and pipeline accident also. Like we have many times heard in the news that this ship called oil leakage near this country, like near Japan or near China, etc. So it leads to death of aquatic. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Audible, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So such kind aquatic life, dangerous to aquatic life, and recently we have seen in the news that Philippines, near the Philippines, some oil tanker had some, it led to some, it had some problem and led to oil leakage, and that particular area, so many turtles and etc. They lost their life, dolphins, etc. So these are the problems with the transport or pipeline accident of such raw material, because chemical industry uses coal, oil, and gas in major. Then consumer use, if we talk about consumer use products, then consumer exposure and release to land during use and disposal. Such kind of, like we have seen detergent, personal care items, these have many impact on our body, particularly skin cancers are related to such products. If these products are not made in a particular manner, and companies actually don't accept this, but there are many lacunas in the processes involved just to cut short the prices, and which the consumers pay price later. And we have seen that in recent times the cases of cancer, particularly skin cancer, has increased a lot, and these chemical products have much share in that part, in causing that havoc on people's health, or particularly skin cancer. Then certain chemicals released by this chemical industry in its production process can lead to a direct or indirect impact on man or environment. We have seen exposure to chemical hazardous subjects such as PCBs, DDT, PBB, heavy metals, endocrine disrupting substances can lead to a direct toxicological effect on man, on the environment, from short or long-term exposure. This kind chemical industries, their air pollution or water pollution or land pollution, this actually causes havoc on the human life and human health. That's why people are so worrisome or so so much against such kind of industries. Then if someone has we can recollect the styrene gas leak, the visuals, what happened there within a few hours. It was really worrisome and scary. If we see the people lying there, not able to breathe, having boils all over the skin, so immediate impact is also worrisome, as well as the long-term impact, like causing cancer or eye diseases, etc., or having some genetic modifications which will impact the generations to come. These are the major problems with this chemical industry and its products. So that's why it is said that we should minimize it. Where it is necessary, we should use, but wherever, like we are using these chemical products, particularly pesticide, fertilizers, insecticides, too much in our agricultural sector, which is not at all required, neither from health perspective as well, nor from the environment perspective. So that's what it was written, that minimize the use of chemicals and minimize the use of raw materials, so that we will save our environment, as well as we will be able to save the non-renewable resources also for use in other sectors and in longer period of durations of time. Then CFCs are non-flammable and non-toxic. Chlorofluorocarbons, these are non-flammable, they are non-combustible and non-toxic, but The problem is that they go in the stratosphere and they destroy the ozone layer, and in this in turn can lead to a greater incidence, because ozone layer prevents UV rays to come to the earth, and if that ozone is depleted, then it will lead to skin cancer. Then the substances like NOx, SOx, then CO2, etc., they lead to acid rain and smog and air pollution. These are some of the accidents which happened. One is from India. I have taken one from Germany. About India, everyone knows that in 1984, 3rd December, over 40 tons of methyl isocyanate leaked from Union Carbide India Limited plant in Bhopal, India. This is known as that Bhopal gas tragedy. The causes of the disaster were attributed to the negligence and the inadequate industrial safety measures adopted by the staff. The effects of the toxic gas are still felt today, because the newborn child there, they are suffering from many diseases like malformations and dysfunctions, particularly their eye dysfunction is much common in Bhopal in among newborns, and diseases among the population. And the Opau explosion in Germany, it is like long back in 1920 when it happened. A tower silo containing ammonium sulfate and ammonium nitrate mixture exploded in BASF. BASF is the largest chemical company of Germany, killing about 600 people and injuring about 2,000. A few months earlier, the plant's industrial process had been altered to lower density and humidity level of the mixture. This factor is considered responsible for the explosion. They tried to alter their process, and in this, it led to the explosion. Now, until now, I have actually explained what is chemical industry, tried to show its impact on our economy as well as ecology and humankind at large. Now, I am going to define this solid waste. What is solid waste? We all have like assumption that solid waste means it will be solid, but it is not like that. Solid waste can be a clinker like substance also, which will be rock or clinker, very solid, and it can be like free flowing tar also. It will be in semi liquid or liquid state. So solid waste is a term, but it means any garbage or refuse or sludge from a wastewater treatment plant, water supply treatment plant, air pollution control facility, or any industry, chemical industry, agricultural operations. Nearly everything we do leaves behind some kind of solid waste. It is important to note that the definition of solid waste is not limited to waste that are physically solid. Many solid wastes are liquid or semi-liquid, or even contains gaseous material in it. So it is very important to remember that solid waste is not always solid in state, physical state. It may be semi-liquid, liquid like tar, and also gaseous material like fly ash will be there. Now, about that was solid waste in general, but what about solid waste from chemical industry? They can be largely categorized into two broad categories. First is process waste, and the second one is non-process waste. What is process means? As the name itself signifies, that process waste is something, that waste which generates from the chemical processes itself, like sludges. Sludges means they will be muddy, some kind of, it will have some wet content in it. Then filter residues, tars, fly ash, off quality product, etc. They are generated from the chemical processes itself, which have been adopted in the chemical industry. It depends upon type and quantity of such, thus its quantity and quality of the process waste will depend upon the type and quantities of industrial chemicals produced and process employed, like on which temperature, which pressure we are conducting these processes. Then what is the equipment design, what are the catalysts used, either we are using stoichiometric reagent or stoichiometric reagent. All these things will determine the process waste. So process waste depends upon the process utilized or the operations utilized, equipment utilized in that chemical industry. Second is non-process waste. This is the waste which doesn't totally depend upon the process, but the of the plant, like generally dependent upon the plant size. Example, the employees working there. If there is a big plant like BSF, BAR, or Aarti Industries, Tata Chemicals, etc., there so many employees will be working in that particular industry. So as the number of human or workers increases at a particular site, then the solid waste generated by that site will also increase, like containers will be there, then so many things like clothes, woods, other things, plastics, etc., will be generated by the plant because of the employees working there and the other things going on. So larger the plant, the larger the non-process waste will be. And we can again categorize non-process waste into combustible waste and non-combustible waste. Why I am actually saying this? Non-process waste are mostly like wood type or cloth, textile, then plastics, etc. So we are sending them to the landfills. So there they have two destinies: either they will be incinerated in incineration sites, or like their combustible waste or non-combustible waste will lie there forever. The landfills have that problem only. So non-process waste can be categorized into combustible waste and non-combustible waste. Then what are the quantity of solid waste from chemical industry? So the quantity of solid waste, it depends majorly upon the total production volume. Means how much chemical we are producing or how much raw material we are using. So if a plant is big, or it is like the BSF or Dow Chemicals, Aarti Chemicals, then total production volume itself will be high. So the waste generated from these industries will be high. But chemical industries are always not very big. There are many chemical industries which are very small, even employing lesser than 10 employees. So from there, definitely the solid waste produced from those sites will be lesser. But if we see the ratio, like how much ratio of the waste produced and the volume of the chemicals produced, we will see that the larger industries are producing less per volume than the smaller industries. Then purity of raw materials. Which kind of raw material we have chosen? Like India is always blamed that our companies they choose lower quality raw materials to minimize their cost of production, and this is the major stake which our government is fighting in other UN nations, I mean UNCD, etc., because it is always their perception is like that Indian companies or the developing countries, they are compromising in the purity of raw materials, which leads to hazardous or toxic waste from our companies. Then efficiency of reaction, how efficient the reaction or the processes involved are. Like I have mentioned, Finland, it is trying that its reaction should be so efficient that all the materials which are used, that is all the raw materials, they are converted to the end products and utilized, and they should be biodegradable or recyclable. Then the fourth is general maintenance. what kind of R&M we are doing in that plant, whether we are going for any means weekly or daily or monthly maintenance, overhauling, what kind of overhauling we are utilizing, whether we are changing our old machineries or the obsolete processes and adopting new, more efficient processes. So these all falls under general maintenance. And it process control, how the process control is like, on which temperature and pressure we are conducting these reactions. So it is always said that if we are using room temperature and room pressure, then it is always good, because then our energy utilization, energy footprint will be very lower as compared to such process which are very much controlled, where the temperatures are controlled either very less or very high, pressure is controlled. In those processes much energy is used, and if energy is more, that is power utilized is more, then its environmental footprint will also be more. That's why the major industries, chemical industries, they are also having their own power plants, from where they use the electricity. But such kind of high usage of energy will lead to depletion of raw materials as well as higher environmental footprint. So management of solid waste and industrial sites involve large annual operating expenditure. From this only we can estimate. Then solid waste management in chemical industries. The first the first and the simple thing which comes to anyone's mind is that if we want to reduce the solid waste, we have to reduce the solid waste generation at source, that is basic process operations only. And disposition also, we have two categories. First is disposal, it will be sent to landfill or to incineration for combustion. And the second is, the better one is salvage, that is whatever we are disposing, it should be salvaged through recycling, recovery or utilization. Means whatever byproduct we are generating in that chemical process, it can be utilized in other sectors or other industry, or it can be recycled, or it should be at least biodegradable, so that it will not last in the environment for long in landfills or incineration sites. Then what is chemical production? So chemical, what happens actually in these chemical industries? So chemical products result from chemical processes which are a complex combination of, there we will see reaction, distillation, absorption, filtration, extraction, drying and screening operations. These are the operations which actually happen in these chemical industries. For cost cutting purposes, most chemical process must be efficient, and so the design of many production operations is focused on controlling and reducing losses of precious materials. Hence, eco-efficiency, including avoiding release to land, water or air, is critical to the industry's economical survival. That is, we have to innovate. Chemical industry needs continuous innovation. First is to reduce the consumption of raw material, that it should be efficient, and second, it should be eco friendly, that is its eco efficiency should be high. It needs much innovation in this sector, and where India is actually lagging. Japan and China, they are innovating at a very fast rate, and other EU countries like Netherlands, Dutch, etc. And then many large chemical, that's what I said, large chemical plants, they have their own power generation units, so that they will generate the power utilized in the chemical plant. Also, they will have their wastewater treatment plant, or wastewater treatment plant in our country, it is known as sewage treatment plants. It will have settling tanks, centrifuge, flocculation tanks, lagoons, filters, biological treatments, etc. So the solid waste which is generated from these chemical plants, wastewater treatment plants, they actually go to that solid waste which is generated from these chemical industries, they are sent to the wastewater treatment plant. That waste water treatment plant can be in at on site, or it can be located in other area where these waste is transported. But any country or any company should prefer on site waste treatment plants. So here we will be discussing what is on site waste treatment plant. It is known as sewage treatment plant also in general terms in our country. It aims to remove contaminants from the sewage. Physical, chemical, and biological processes are used to remove contaminants and produce treated wastewater. It is known as effluent that is safe enough for release into environment. Actually, if we categorize sewage treatment plant, they will have three major steps. First is primary treatment. Second is secondary treatment, and many advanced sewage treatment plant they go for tertiary treatment also. So the question arises: what is primary treatment? Primary treatment is basically a physical treatment. There we will be using filters, then centrifuges, and that settlers, lagoons, etc., to settle those heavy solids which are present in that waste. Like consists of temporarily holding the sewage in a coincident, there will be a basin where heavy solids can settle to the bottom while oil, grease, and lighter solid flow to the surface. So this is known as primary treatment, where we will be actually doing filtration. We will be taking away the heavy solids, and the more dissolvable things will be there in that sewage. Then comes the secondary treatment. What is secondary treatment in sewage treatment plant? In secondary, as now the sewage coming out of the primary treatment, it is free from those heavy solids. So now we will go for biological processes. Here bacteria and protozoa mainly are used, both in anaerobic and aerobic conditions. Aerobic means in presence of oxygen, and anaerobic means in absence of oxygen. So whatever output we are getting from primary treatment, we send it to secondary treatment plant, where biological reactions will be done with the help of bacteria and protozoa. Actually, they will be eating those waste, and whatever residue is left, it is sent to the tertiary treatment plant, where we again go for precipitation. Whatever is left in that sewage secondary treatment, the leftover of the secondary treatment plant, it will go for further precipitation and mostly disinfection. Here we do disinfection, so that water can be utilized even for drinking purpose. In Delhi, it has been highlighted by our Delhi CM that there is one office, government office, where they have such kind of arrangement of machinery which can convert even the water from the washrooms to the potable drinking water. Though no one drinks that water, but it is of that kind that all the bacteria, the waste, etc., these are actually cleaned and disinfected in the tertiary treatment plant. So sewage treatment plants are mostly, they have three steps: primary treatment, secondary treatment, and tertiary treatment. And sewage treatment plant are used for basically for treatment of the solid waste from this chemical industry. Then we have come to one case study. Finland, we can also see in the internet, it has done a tremendous job in green chemistry. That's why if we search for any kind of solid waste treatment from chemical industry, the first one to come is Finland, and then we can obviously we can see mention of China, the policies they have, and also US, because US is a giant in chemical industry. What they use is like benign disposal. It is like a 4-step process where benign disposal is done. They focus on recycle and reuse. they reduce the chemical usage and energy uses. What I said, what we mean by reduction of energy usage, they go for such kind of processes which can be done by on in ambient temperature and pressure. Like the major, it is not related to chemical industry, but as an example I want to quote because it is COVID scenario, I want to quote why Moderna and Pfizer, we have not gone for those vaccines yet in our country. Because we can see that these vaccines, the Moderna and Pfizer, they need a very low temperature for their preservation, like -80 degrees centigrade. And such kind of preservations, such kind of low temperatures, they require lot of energy to maintain that kind of temperature or pressure. So if and that is the benefit of our vaccines, that our vaccines, because India has a large population already. We are having energy shortage or power shortage, as we saw in Punjab, that they are in such an energy shortage that the government staffs, they have been asked to go to their home after 2 p.m. because then ACs will be off and they won't be using any kind of AC or fan in that state. So such kind of energy shortage our Punjab state saw. So if we go for such processes or such interventions in anything, whether it is vaccine or chemical industry, where we are manipulating or controlling the temperature or pressure to such a level which requires lot of energy usage, that is not good. So Finland is also concentrating in such processes which doesn't need so much of temperature or pressure monitoring or controlling. Then replacing the hazardous materials processes and inefficient processes and non-sustainable components. So always try that we, through innovations, definitely, that we should not be using any particular chemical or product which is hazardous or particularly toxic, like DDT or endosulfan, etc. That everything has substitution, so we should go for those particular substitutes which are mostly non-toxic and non-hazardous. Rather than to reduce the cost, we are going for any raw material or any product which is hazardous or toxic. So this is their model, and there are 12 steps actually in the Finland, which can be broadly categorized in these 12 steps. And because of this, they have been able to go for that green chemistry, green chemical industry. Like first is the to prevent waste at source. This is the obvious thing which we will do. Second is synthetic method to convert all possible material to final product. Such kind of method should be utilized that all materials, all raw materials should be converted to final products to minimize the byproducts. Then third is little or no toxic substance as waste. We should aim that whatever we are producing or byproduct we are producing, that should be non-toxic. Minimize toxicity of chemicals. Then fifth is least use of solvents or the catalyst, etc. Whatever for every chemical reaction, we need some catalyst to increase the pace or to control the temperature, etc. So we should adopt such processes which reduces the use of solvents or catalysts. Then energy requirement, that's what I said. We should always aim for such processes which are low in energy usage or power usage. We should not go for our own power plant. We can install our own power plant, but what about the coal or natural gas, etc. they will be using, which can be utilized in other sectors. factors. So temperature and pressure control should be avoided. Then raw materials should be renewable. That is, we should use air or such minerals which are renewable, wood, etc. And least use of coal, coke, or petroleum. Then the end product should be biodegradable. It is very important because the solid waste which we are generating from these chemical industries, they mostly go to the landfills. In our country, it certainly does. Very less go through that sewage treatment plant or incinerations. So, if they are biodegradable, the products are biodegradable in nature, that wastes are biodegradable in nature, then yeah, if even if we send it without treatment to landfill, in time, with time they will decompose. So what we should aim, that whatever products, end products we are generating from these chemical industries, they should be biodegradable. Then that substances or processes should be chosen in a way to minimize chemical accidents. This is most important. The 12th point is the most important in this chemical industry, that substances and the form of substance used in chemical process should be chosen in such a way that it should minimize the potential for chemical accidents, including release, particularly explosions and fires. Whatever we can do, we should do in this to ensure that these processes should be safe. They should not lead to chemical accidents, because if accidents happen in these chemical industries, because of their inherent nature, it will be very toxic, very detrimental, both for man as well as environment. So we should always, like any other industry, particularly in this industry, we should go for safe processes. That's what I wanted to underline, because it is a recent incident which happened, that is gross negligence by LG Polymers Private Limited in the management of their chemical plant in Andhra Pradesh, Visakhapatnam, which led to a gas leak styrene. That was the styrene that killed 12 and hospitalized 585 on that day itself. We don't know actually, this is the government report. We don't know in actual means what is the actual scenario there, and what the people there, they are suffering right now, what kind of problems they must be suffering right now, because styrene is very, very, very what dangerous, as well as like cancer causing gas. Then second is the policies for second case study is policies that OECD countries, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, India is not part of this. It is a monitoring country, but it is not like it is not a member country of OECD. So OECD countries, they are very much particular about the chemical industries and the hazards associated to it. So they have their own policies. So it is a flowchart what they are doing, policies for managing the risk from production of chemicals and chemical products in OECD countries. One is one side it is like management of risk posed during production and processing, involves like collecting emission data. Yes, this is very important, which all the organizations or governments are doing. What chemical plants or industries, they try to hide the data. So what they are focusing on is the transparency in the emission data or the solid waste generation data. Then collecting monitoring data, setting emissions limits, which we do because of our Rio de Janeiro or Earth Summit. That what are the emission limits? The problem is developed countries, they actually progressed in an era when our environmental pollution was not this at not this high level. But now when the developing countries, they are progressing, particularly India and China, when they are progressing in this sector, many limitations and penalties have been imposed on countries as well as companies for any kind of pollution or hazards caused. So they had the advantage of early start, and are now because we are developing, so we have to spend more, and we have to be more thoughtful. So because of that, they are setting emissions limit. Then issuing permits, particularly for hazardous and toxic waste. They are issuing permits whether the import export of any chemical is permissible or not, whether any chemical industry need license or not. Such kind of things these OECD countries check. Then establishing safety procedures to prevent and respond to accidents. If any accident happens, what should be the preventive steps or what should be the response? Such kind of things these OECD countries, they have developed policies for that. Then management of risk posed by products and preparations involves, like data collection. It actually, data collection is important both at raw material process or in product stage. In all the stages, data collection is equally important. Then assessing and classifying chemical hazards, evaluating uses and exposure. What are the uses and what are the exposures? Then deciding on the need for labeling, worker safety sheets, etc. How should be this? These are done in our country also. Like labeling is very important nowadays in industries. What kind of products or byproducts you are generating, whether it is combustible, non-combustible, or whether it is biodegradable, it is toxic, hazardous. Every kind of labeling is done in the products, byproducts of these chemical industries. Then deciding on the need for restrictions on marketing and use of product, like whether that product is needed or not, whether DDT is needed, endosulfan is needed by the society or not, whether such a large use of pesticide, insecticide and fertilizers, nitrate fertilizers are needed, or we can go for other eco-friendly methods also, like crop rotation or using the organic products, etc. So we need to decide what should be the quantum of products we need as an output from these chemical industries. Then establishing product registers and implementing an integrated product policy. Integrated product policy means whatever raw material we are using, that should convert into some kind of product, or nothing should go waste. Then comes the policy instruments. Here, it is a generalized policy instruments for all the solid waste or any environment, because solid waste from chemical industry, it falls under the wide definition of solid waste or waste from the industries. So under policy instruments, there are three types of instruments. First is regulatory instrument, second is economic instrument, and third is voluntary instruments. What we mean by regulatory instruments, like government, sorry, please let me check. Regulatory instruments, like in regulatory instruments, government takes certain decisions. They make laws, rules, regulations, what companies are have to actually abide by. Pre-market approval, like licensing, need of licenses for hazardous or toxic materials, pre-market approval, emission standards, labeling, which I have also mentioned in the earlier section, that it has been mandated by the government that all the chemical industry should label their products, and any kind of false labeling will incur penalties and fines, which will be very like hard, regressive kind of fines are there. Then product bans, which is not allowed for import, export, or as a process material. So many chemicals are now banned in India. Then where a public authorities mandate the environmental performance to be achieved or the technologies to be used by companies. So these are regulatory instruments which is used by the government or the international organizations. Then second is economic instruments. via taxes, tradable permits, refund system, any concession, fines, fees, etc. So these are economic instruments. These are also imposed by government or authorities, whereby companies or consumers are given financial incentives to reduce environmental damage. Where government says that if you use this kind of process, like in the development of our vaccine, government gave incentive for such kind of vaccines which can be stored at our ambient temperature and pressure. Such kind of economic instruments are also used. Then voluntary instruments. Voluntary instruments, as the name signifies, it is voluntary. The companies, they actually, the companies or countries, they voluntarily say that we will abide by these we are reducing our limits, or whatever limits or regulations have been decided, we will be doing better than that. So like voluntary codes such as responsible care or eco-labeling schemes, then whereby companies make commitments to improve their environmental performance beyond the law demands. This is voluntary instruments. So where regulatory, all those sectors where regulatory instruments or economic instruments don't work, their voluntary instruments works. Because if we are getting short of a particular result, it means our regulatory instruments and economic instruments are not at par. So if we reduce the limit on our own, it means that those voluntary instruments are going to work better for our humankind as well as environment. So all these three are important, where regulatory instruments and economic instruments are done by the authorities, and the voluntary instruments by the companies themselves. Then what are the international policies? We all have heard about Montreal Protocol. This protocol is international protocol. It is to protect the ozone layer by phasing out the production of numerous substances that are responsible for ozone depletion, particularly chlorofluorocarbons, hydrochlorofluorocarbons. These are actually monitored by Montreal Protocol. That is, which region, which country is producing how much ozone depleting substances. It is monitored by Montreal Protocol. And ozone depletion substances, they are actually product of chemical industry only, like refrigerants. Then 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro, when it adopted Chapter 19 of Agenda 21. It is for the environmental pollution, overall protection, environmental pollution. But here, that Agenda 21, this chapter calls for, among other things, accelerating international work on the assessment of chemical risk, harmonization of classification and labeling of chemicals. That's why I have mentioned it and emphasized that labeling of chemicals is very important nowadays in chemical industry. Establishing risk reduction programs and strengthening national capacities for managing chemicals. Then third is Rotterdam Convention on the prior informed consent procedure for certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade, to promote shared responsibilities in relation to importation of hazardous chemicals. Like whether any country is importing or exporting any chemical, whether it is hazardous, and the destination country, whether it is aware or it is well informed about that product or not, it comes under Rotterdam Convention. The convention promotes the open exchange of information and calls on exporters of hazardous chemicals to use proper labeling, include directions on safe handling, and inform purchasers of any known restrictions or bans. It is particularly important for India because India is a developing country, and developed countries, they are sending their waste, solid waste or waste from hazardous industries to India for its processing or its disposal. So Under this Rotterdam Convention, it is the right of India to know about the actual nature of the chemicals. Sometimes what happens, the exporting countries, they know about that these chemicals are very dangerous, very harmful for the population of our country. So they try to conceive or hide the actual hazards of the chemicals. But under this Rotterdam Convention, if any country, exporting country, does this, India is eligible to fight its case in international organizations. So under Rotterdam Convention, it is the obligation of the exporting country of such chemicals to inform and call the importing country or the recipient country about the actual nature of the chemicals which it has exported. Signatory nations can decide whether to allow or ban the importation of chemicals listed in the treaty, and exporting countries are obliged to make sure that procedures within their jurisdiction comply. Then last is Stockholm Convention. Stockholm Convention is about persistent organic pollutants which remains in our environment for longer period of time, like Indosulfan, DDT, aldrin, etc. These are very, very dangerous and harmful chemicals which remain. First, they are harmful, very harmful, and they remain in our environment for longer duration of time. That's why they are known as persistent organic pollutant. So Stockholm Convention is about that, to eliminate or restrict the production and use of such POPs. So, if any particular company wants to produce this Indosulfan or DDT or Aldrin, they will have to go through a rigorous procedure, government procedure, policies, etc. They will have to take permit, license, etc. for all this, and they will have to abide by all the norms, rules, regulations which the government has imposed for such kind of POPs, that is persistent organic pollutants. Also, the international bodies will be monitoring such companies. Now, what are the chemical management policies in India? First is Solid Waste Management Rule 2016. This is actually very recent one, that is 2016, where solid waste management, its focus is on solid waste management. It focuses on waste segregation at source, that whether it is biodegradable, non-biodegradable, combustible, non-combustible, settling type, non-settling type, hazardous, toxic or non-toxic type. Such kind of waste segregation is necessary at source for the solid waste. Then urban local bodies have been given a permission to charge bulk generators to a user fee to collect and process their waste. So whatever the municipalities or panchayats, etc., whatever they can charge such kind of fee if they know that a particular industry is a polluting kind of industry and it causes some kind of pollution. Like I have already said that a population of a particular place, they always protest setting of such industries. So if industry promises some kind of benefits for the locals of that particular area in terms of user fees, etc., etc., they agree for such kind of industries. So that also comes under solid waste management. Then no non-recyclable waste having a calorific value of 1500 kilocalorie per kilogram or more is permitted in landfills. That is, this is a norm for all the landfills. Whether it is followed or not, it is upon the urban local bodies, but this has been said that any waste which has a calorific value more than 1500 are not permitted in landfills. Then second is zero discharge policy. What is zero discharge policy? I actually work in NTPC, which is a thermal power plant. There also we had to abide by it, and all the chemical plants, they have to abide by zero discharge policy. Means whatever discharge, whatever whatever we are taking inside our plant, we cannot throw it outside our plant, because what we were using the water from Agra Canal, which was very, very, very polluted. It was sewer, sewer actually, but we were not allowed to even send that sewer water because we were using sewer water, but we were not allowed to send back that sewer water in that Agra canal because we were coming under zero discharge policy. Whatever raw materials, whether it is sewer water only, whatever raw materials we are taking inside our plant, we have to utilize it completely. We cannot put anything outside our plant, whether it is sewer or water or air pollution, something, anything. No pollutant is permissible outside the plant. So for that, our plant set up our own sewage treatment plant, and whatever sewer we were using in our plant, it was going to that sewage treatment plant, and it was used again. It was recycled, it was distilled, and it was again utilized both in our power plant as well as our employee residential area. So this zero discharge policy is applicable to all the polluting industries, whether it is power plant or chemical plants or nuclear power plants, etc. Then there are various acts under which we try to control the pollution or manage any kind of disaster, and chemical disasters also falls under such kind of acts. So a number of regulations covering the safety in transportation, liability, insurance, and compensation have been enacted. These are the some relevant provisions on chemical disaster management prevailing in our country, India. First is Explosives Act 1884, Petroleum Act, Factories Act, Insecticides Act, Environment Protection Act, Motor Vehicle Act, Public Liability Insurance Act, Disaster Management Act, and Manufacturing, Storage, and Import of Hazardous Chemicals Rules 2001. So all the chemical industries, they have to abide by all these acts, rules, and regulations. And like if for an example, Tata Chemicals want to make a certain kind of chemical or drug, it can't import the raw material from any other country if it falls under hazardous chemical rules 2000. It has to take the adequate permissions, and it has to share the information on the byproducts and products with the government, with the government of our country, as well as the international organizations also. Then classification of chemical waste. We are actually broadly classifying, means under these regulations, we classify all the chemical waste in 4 sections. One is hazardous waste, second is non-hazardous waste, third is universal waste, and fourth is safe for sink or trash disposal. As the first one signifies, the name signifies, hazardous waste is something which is toxic for man as well as environment. Any substance excluding domestic and radioactive waste doesn't come under hazardous waste because it has another category, that is radioactive waste category. So though radioactive waste is a hazardous waste, it doesn't come under this section of this solid waste. So any substance excluding domestic and radioactive waste which because of its quantity or corrosive, reactive, ignitable, toxic, and infectious characteristics causes significant hazards to human health or environment when improperly treated, stored, transported, and disposed is known as hazardous waste. Collection and management of chemical waste as hazardous waste ensures the maximum level of environmental protection and is the safest means of chemical waste management. So under chemical waste management, we focus on hazardous waste the most because these are the most toxic, most hazardous for human life as well as environment. Then second comes the non-hazardous waste. So under precautionary principles dictates that we collect these materials because we do not understand the potential harm they can cause in the environment, like ethidium bromide. So ethidium bromide, if we talk about, it is non-hazardous till now we don't know the potential harm, but we are sometimes we are susceptible about its nature, what kind of harm it can produce in longer duration of time. So if the data is not proper, or we think that it is not complete, then we about any kind of chemical and its effect on man and environment, then we keep it under non-hazardous waste. It means as of now it is non-hazardous, but it can turn hazardous if we are under prolonged exposure. Then third is universal waste. That is waste that are so widespread. Example, mercury containing waste. It is very widespread. So this comes under universal waste. And the last is safe for sink or trash disposal. Those waste which are safe if we throw it out. So a very small percentage of chemical waste are unregulated and safe to pour into sinks or place in the trash. Means we can actually dispose it in any sink, any landfill, or any water body safely. But very small percentage of chemical waste fall under this safe for sink or trash disposal segment. So some examples include benign salt like sodium chloride. Already all the water has NaCl in it. So sodium chloride and non-toxic and non-corrosive cleaning chemicals like detergents, etc. Already we wash our clothes, utensils, etc. with these detergents only. So these chemicals fall under safe for sink or trash disposal. So with this, my presentation on this topic, that is solid waste from chemical industry, ends. So I would like to ask anyone like if they have any question on this topic. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah, sir, I have actually finished my presentation. So, if anyone likes to ask any question or any doubt, etc., or give any genuine feedback, then I'm open to it.
Yeah, ma'am. Ma'am, they are giving good comments, but I think they have no any query.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for patient hearing. And any kind of feedback to improve my presentation or sessions, I'm always open to it. I will actually take it with goodwill, and it will be actually input for me for improvising my things. So thanks for listening and for feedback.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, please check your inbox also.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, friends, let us finish this session at this time. So next we will start your test at 3:15 p.m. And before that, I will send you link about assessment through your mails, registered mail. So please check around 3 to 3:15 p.m. Between that, I will send it to you. So let us meet around 3 p.m. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. Goodbye.